Welcome to the Art of Succession podcast with Barrett Young. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that shape the journey of leadership transitions and business success. No matter where you find yourself along the journey, this is the podcast where you'll find the tools to make it happen.
I would get involved in other aspects like sales and whatnot, but nowhere near to the extent that I am now. Retirement was something that he never thought he would do. We'll figure it out when. Biggest lesson I learned was how to just put one foot in front of the other.
My name is Barrett Young, and this is the Art of Succession podcast. My guest today is Garrett Noach, president of Lamothermic, a manufacturing company in New York. Garrett, welcome to the Art of Succession.
Thanks for having me, Barrett.
So we've got a story that we're going to unpack today. Your father was the president of the company, and then he unfortunately passed. What year did he pass in?
2022.
Okay, so he passed just under 3 years ago, and you found yourself at the age of 25 taking over this manufacturing company. Before we get into that, what's interested you in telling this story today on the Art of Succession?
Hopefully reaching the one person out there that's in my shoes and can look back and say, you can do it too.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being open and candid in this interview. So did your father start the company? Just tell me a little bit about the origin of the company quite briefly.
Sure. So we make investment castings for commercial, industrial use, anything you can think of. Dad founded the company back in 1976. He was working for the company that built our induction furnaces that we used to melt the metal. And he was working for that company and was getting a little stagnant in that role. And said, I can do this whole casting thing too, and went and built the company. So he started in my grandparents' basement and got a location here in Cold Springs down the road. A couple of years later, moved to Pauling, and now we're in Brewster. We've been here for probably about 30-something years. So
okay,
kind of how it started.
So you grew up in this business then?
I did. I've been running around this place since I was, yay tall with my scooter and my old Sony Walkman.
Okay. Did Dad have any co-founders or anything, or?
He started the business with a college roommate, and they saw different visions for the business, so they split ways. My uncle joined the business, so my father and my uncle really kind of built it from the ground up.
Okay, gotcha. Is your uncle still in the business, or?
As of last year, he is retired, and it's me.
Okay, all right. So your father then wasn't 100% owner at the time of his passing?
Correct.
But he was the acting president and running the company?
That's correct.
Okay. Had you been involved in the business? Tell me a little bit about your involvement up until that point.
Sure. Like I said, I've been running around these walls since I was a little kid. And when I became 16, I started working in the business, officially rather than just helping my dad push the buttons as a kid. And I would come here after school when I was in high school and work a couple hours here, a couple hours there. I'd come in on the weekends. Then I went to college. I graduated from CU New Paltz with a degree in mechanical engineering. And during my college breaks, I would come and work kind of like an engineering intern, if you will. When I graduated college, I got hired full-time as a manufacturing engineer here and spent probably, let's see if I do the math correctly, about 4 years doing that up until Dad's passing.
Okay. So from teenage years, it was your purpose to come into the family business then?
Yeah, it was kind of my intent. I was really big into computers when I was younger, and I went off to school thinking, I'm going to be a computer engineer. I don't need this dirty manufacturing stuff. And then one day I had a professor that gave a presentation in mechanical engineering, and I just sat there. And at the end of the presentation, I said, in the world am I doing? This is so cool. And had I do it all again, I'd probably gone to school for manufacturing engineering rather than mechanical engineering. But yeah, that's what kind of flipped the switch. And one day I just kind of made the decision. I think this is what I want to do. And it still is what I want to do.
Okay. Interesting. And give me just a ballpark on the size of the company, like number of employees, volume, or anything like that that you're comfortable sharing.
Sure. We've been as high as probably about 130 people. Currently, we're about 53. When I took over the business, we were at um, about 70 and change. 2024 was a slower year than I had liked. Um, but we reside in a 50,000 square foot facility. We've run as much as 3 shifts, almost 24/7 for the most part. Um, we're about $12 million.
Okay. Do you have like large supply or large customers, or is it more small order? Like, what's that look like?
A little bit of everything. We have some very large customers that make things that you and I use every single day. You see them all around the world in terms of automotive. And I got the guy down the road that's rebuilding, a barn and wants some door handles made. So everything in between.
Okay. So I'm just trying to I'm trying to get some context here of what you're stepping into at 25 years old.
So what I stepped into, I'd say, we haven't grown all that much. About a $12 million company. We had about 70 and change employees running 3 shifts.
Pretty stable, other than like supply chain issues and COVID and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
so that's kind of what I stepped into.
I was going to say that's about the timeline. It
Oh
sounds like.
yeah, that was a painful time in terms of the supply chain and COVID and everything. Yeah, um, but it's a well-established business. When I got into it, I definitely saw room for improvement, and there were some red flags in my mind. But when Dad passed, it was kind of my first priority to take care of some of those things. When I stepped in, I was kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. I had gone to school for engineering. I think what I'd say is proficient in doing some of the engineering things here. Had no formal training in how to run a business or any of the legal or HR matters or anything like that.
Yeah. Prior to his passing, what was your role? Were you a department head or shadowing him? What did that look like?
Just a manufacturing engineer. I was developing processes for the products that we manufacture, uh, from soup to nuts. Uh, but that was really kind of it. My niche was in engineering, and I would get involved in other aspects like sales and whatnot, but nowhere near to the extent that I am now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I was kind of just dipping my toes in the water. Dad didn't really have a succession plan, which was kind of the hardest part for me.
Gotcha. But prior to that, how many mechanical engineers would you guys have on staff? I mean, one of 10, one of three. What's that look
About
like?
one of three, one of four.
Okay. Gotcha. So you're kind of in the middle, even though you're, the owner's kid and everything like that, and have been running around doing this for 6 years. But
Yeah,
so you don't have like department or budget responsibility or anything at this point.
no, at that point, no, not at all.
Okay. And your father passed of cancer, correct?
Yeah, he lost his third battle,
Okay.
unfortunately.
I'm sorry. How many years had he been fighting this?
So he got re-diagnosed with cancer in 2020. So on top of COVID, which was a nightmare in itself, that's when he was diagnosed. So we spent, you know, 2 and change years battling what everyone else was battling in terms of the world of COVID and whatnot. And we were battling, dad being sick, COVID aside, immunocompromised, a difficult way of living, if you will. It was a very emotional time in my life, and when I think about it, it's still emotional. But it was something that you do the best you can.
Yeah. Prior to that, his first two bouts with cancer. I mean, were you a child when he first was diagnosed? Or?
Yeah, I was a child. I don't remember what age I was, but I was too young to understand, um, and it was difficult on my mom, and uh, my brother was a little bit too young to understand, but my sister understood. Um, by the time I understood what had happened, it had happened, and he was in remission for 18 years or something like that. I don't know the exact amount.
Okay, so almost your entire life then.
Yeah, and his second battle was when I was in college, so we had thought that kind of cleared up, and then it progressed into a different, or it became a different type of cancer. So it was, we're going down the road this way, and it said, well, we're going that way, type of deal.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's touchy and still emotional, and
sure.
So you came in. It sounds like right before the third bout with cancer started again.
Yep.
And you said he passed without a succession plan. So I mean, succession planning for any business owner is hard enough already. We don't want to admit that there's an end out there. I imagine fighting cancer, you just have to stay optimistic and not give in to that. Is that why he wasn't prioritizing succession planning, do you think?
Can't really tell you what was going through his head other than it wasn't on the top of his to-do list. My dad, like me, loved what he did, and retirement was something that he never thought he would do. Um, we'll figure it out when. We'll figure it out when. Well, when came and gone. So it wasn't something that he was really thinking about.
Okay. How much planning had he done? I mean, had he put anything in place? Is it like a 20-year-old will, or?
Yeah, we had he had a will, but it really didn't do much in terms of me figuring out anything with the business. There was um, you know, outdated drafts of things, but nothing too crazy.
Gotcha. So, I mean, if we can we talk about this for a little bit? Because a lot of people think, wills and estates and trusts and things like that. And they think, oh, if I just write it down in that, it's going to take care of the family. But business owners need an operations plan. I mean,
That's the majority of it, in my opinion. Doesn't matter what you put down on paper if you don't have a plan to execute. Who cares what's on paper? You won't be able to do it.
Yeah, especially if you don't have a family member involved in the business or signing power over checks and bank accounts and things like that. It could take months to try to unfreeze assets or get in contact with a trustee of any estate plan. But you've got payroll coming up this next week, so
Yeah.
Lessons learned that you want to share or just enforce from that?
The biggest lesson I learned was how to just put one foot in front of the other every day for quite a long time until I was starting to feel confident in what I was doing. We have had and still have a wonderful team that helped me get through it um, to a point where I felt a little bit more stable. But the biggest lesson I take away, like I said, is just learning how to keep going. A good therapist and some good hard work goes a long way, and organization. Learn as much as you can every day. because you don't want to be rushed to do it all in a short period of time like I did.
I mean, if you don't want to, please stop me.
Sure.
But talk me through that first month after he passed. I mean, you have to wake up, you have to go in, and then you also have employees who've probably been working with him for 15, 20, maybe even 40 years at this point. And you have to get them to show up and do the work. I mean, was there grief counselor involved for the team, or just a lot of checking in and
A lot of checking in. Yeah, I'll tell you as much as I can from the beginning. Um, I remember the morning that Dad had passed, and we got a call from the doctor saying, this was the end. And that for me is where it started. Um, I obviously took the day off, and we waited for the end to come. It was kind of slow and painful. I took about 2 days off to grieve, and I came into the office, and that's when I said, all right, it's time to keep going. Everyone here was holding the weight for me, and my uncle was here, and he said, all right, Garrett, it's time to go. And I said, all right, let's do it. And the next, several weeks, it was, all right, well, Dad has an empty desk here. What do I do with that? I spent a lot of time cleaning the desk because Dad has all these files. What are these? Went through those. Um, yeah, it was checking in with myself, checking in with the people that work for me. It was a difficult time for everyone, but everyone kind of stood on each other's shoulders. It was, this is what Dad would have wanted. Dad would have wanted us to do it this way. And while, that's kind of hard in today's way of thinking, at the, immediate month after his passing was, um, let's make Dad proud, and let's keep, doing the things I need to get done. And it was probably a week or two after that, I said, all right, I need to learn what to do. Like I said, we have a team that kept me going. But a lot of the growing pains were me figuring it out. And, you know, kind of by the way it goes, making it my own style. I didn't have a whole lot of time working with my dad in the capacity of what it means to run a business. I had time with him doing engineering related projects, but I have no idea what my dad would have said on half the things I needed to ask him about running a business.
So who were you able to lean on during this time? Had your uncle had any experience running the business too, or
Yeah,
advisor, CPA, anything, attorney?
yeah, I had a good amount of people. Our general manager that was running the plant for, 30 years or something at the time, really has a good grasp on the way the business runs. And my uncle was here, doing the same. Most of the key managers I have are the ones that held their own and helped me create my own in a way. My first goal, probably in the 6 months after my dad's passing, for me mentally was, stabilize. What do I need to do to stabilize? Because I felt very unstable at the time. I didn't know what I didn't know, and it was a rapid uh, exercise in learning of learning the things I don't know.
I mean, a company of 70, you've got to have systems and HR and accounting department, sales, different kinds of things. Am I correct in that? And so those things had been set up in advance and kind of just leaned on those?
Some of the things, some of them not so much. We don't have an accounting department. We have somebody that does accounting that interfaces with our accountants, and same thing with HR. Our sales team was one at the time, so like we didn't have these big giant teams of people, but I had people.
And so they just kept doing, while you're taking these 6 months to stabilize, they're just kind of business as usual, trying to keep things going the way that they had been going.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good description of it. It was, we do have systems and processes that kept things going. Yeah, like you said, business as usual. But from a leadership of the business standpoint, that's really where I needed to fill the gaps, because anyone knows, how to follow the directions and push the buttons, but in terms of where is the company going from here is a much larger question.
Yeah. What happened? When do we decide the directions need to change?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, that was the biggest thing, understanding prior to this, I had no real understanding of the financial situation of the company. And it was all a black box to me. And it was like, all right, time to open the box and dig in and see what's there. All that was kind of done as needed to. And that kind of led me into the next phase of, after I stabilize, what do I learn that will help me grow, and then how do I grow and develop? And now I find myself in this growing and developing stage. Here we are, almost 3 years later. It's a totally different picture.
Okay. I definitely want to get into what you've done with the company and made it your own. I mean, I don't want you to feel like you're dishonoring your dad, but what kind of messes did you find? What kind of messes do people leave because they always think I can fix this tomorrow?
A lot of things that my dad didn't know about. He was really great engineer. Not so much a person that wanted to really drive a company in a direction. He didn't find that part as fun as and exciting as I do, which is totally fine. Um, I wouldn't say there was anything messy. If I had to get close to the term messy, it probably would have been just the way that there wasn't a blueprint on how to keep going. There was no, if dad passed, then do this type of thing. Um, yeah, there was no plan. I think that was the part that bothered me. It was, I knew things that had to get done, but not from dad's planning.
The size that you guys were at, and number of employees, and just the size of your customers and everything, was there any fear that revenue was going to dry up? I don't know if your dad was involved in that relationship side of sales or not.
Oh yeah, he was, and I was fearful of that, but no one else was. I'm proud to say we didn't lose a single customer over the fact that dad wasn't around. We didn't lose a single employee due to the fact that dad wasn't around. So the brand of the business remained, even though I had concerns about it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Anything else around this that I haven't asked or haven't pried into?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. All right. So the first 6 months, were you able, I assume, within the first 6 months to stabilize the company? Did that go faster than expected? Did it go slower than expected?
It went faster than expected. Stabilize the company maybe isn't the right term, because it's not like we were, about to crash or anything. It was more so, we're kind of on autopilot, and there's a time and a place for when you get down, off of autopilot, and who's going to fly the plane type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were moving forward in an okay direction. Stabilize for me was understand the systems and what are the next steps going to look like. And yeah, I was able to do that. A lot of hours, a lot of soul searching, quite frankly. Now it was, well, what do I want to do? It was no longer, well, what did Dad and I want to do? It was, what did I want to do?
I hope that you've gotten a lot out of my discussion with Garrett Noach. You can watch part 2 of our interview linked here. We have new episodes twice a month interviewing business owners with their own succession stories. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, the link is down in the description below. If you've learned something from this episode, please share it with others. And I want to thank you for watching The Art of Succession.